world of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. It's the David Knight Show.
As the clock strikes 13, it's Monday, the 23rd of March, year of our Lord 2026, take 2. Well, we think we've got the criminal system ironed out. We will see, but we're going to go back to the original plan. We're going to pick up where we left off with Lindsey Graham's bloodlust. And there's been an update since we stopped the program. And apparently, Trump is always chickens out. Apparently, and this is a good thing if he chickens out on setting the Mideast on fire, because we know that's exactly what's going to happen. But evidently, there has been a retrenchment there, according to the Iranians. And so if he's not going to start bombing all of their infrastructure, then perhaps we can hope that they won't bomb all of the world's energy infrastructure as well. We're going to take a look at what's going on with the TSA and ICE, what is happening with the pipeline of distractions that Trump has to essentially wag the docs, the documents. We'll be right back. Well, everything we see from Trump is desperation and improvisation, reaction, not a plan that they're executing. There is no plan, and everybody sees that now, and hopefully the reaction, perhaps somebody has spoken to him about how it's not a good idea to set the world's energy supply on fire. So if he decides to have a coastal invasion, that's going to happen, but that decision hasn't been made yet either. Again, you're not going to take the advice of your generals and common sense either. He's just going to rush ahead, as they say, fools rush ahead, and we've got a fool for a president. Well, you've got we've got, hang on a second. We've got, this is my bad here. We've got a lot of Israeli threats that are on the way, and we've got, we can see what is happening with Joe Kent, and it's not a surprise that they're coming for him big time because he pushed back against their war. Just take a look at this threat to shut down students. And again, you can see the character of the Israeli government in the sense that they have the hubris to demand censorship of speech and destruction of the First Amendment in order to protect their political entity.
If you target Jewish students, your actions will not disappear into the darkness. We will shine a light on you that, thanks to Google and SEO, will follow you for the rest of your life.
What a witch.
When you look for a job, when you look for a spouse, when you look for a nanny, when you look for anything, our work will always be documented. Again, thanks to Google and SEO.
This is the embassy of Israel that she's speaking at.
Leaders smeared Israel, excused Hamas. We pressured CEOs. Some resigned. Many were terminated. But policies were changed, thankfully, from governmental to art institutions. Online, where anonymous accounts spread violent threats, we traced patterns, elevated evidence, and worked with authorities, leading to arrests from Florida, South Carolina, New York, California, and Texas.
Because speech is violence, according to them.
Sadly. Today, Stop Anti-Semitism, I'm proud to say, runs one of the most robust anti-Semitic enforcement operations in the United States, monitoring campuses, digital networks, activist groups, and public officials, documenting incidents in real time and mobilizing millions of people, of allies.
I've had it with Israel. I'm sick of them.
Side.
Is that anti-Semitic?
No,
it's anti-foreign government, anti-genocide. That's what it is.
Jewish students can walk across a quad without
You want to shut down our free speech? Why? What are you afraid of?
Employers understand that
you're afraid of the truth.
Anti-Semitism is
we know
not
what you are.
Activism. It's bigotry, and it will cause you to lose your job.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, I don't really care, quite frankly. I'm sick and tired of the Israeli threats. I'm sick and tired of them destroying our Constitution, taking us to war, and punishing people. But we got something else that's coming down the pipeline. And it's going to be very easy for them to do this. You've got Trump with his AI initiative, and we got Marsha Blackburn, the senator from Tennessee, who's going to be our next governor, with no doubt about it. She is so unbelievably popular. Republican state, and she is so popular. When she got into the race with all the money, I wonder where she's getting the money from. Could it be AIPAC? She has her own legislative agenda of how they're going to control and shut down the internet. And I mean, they're going to shut it down. They're going to go after the corporations, and the same tactics that we see happening in California that we talked about, saying you will get everybody's identity or we will shut you down. You will know your customer. What they're doing is they're taking all of these that they've used for the longest time, banks and anybody that has anything to do with anything financial, transferring money, any of that stuff. They have for the longest time use those as a means of surveillance, the know your customer rules and all the rest of the stuff. Now they're taking that to the internet, every aspect of the internet. Got to get rid of anonymity. And as part of Marsha Blackburn's law that she has introduced, hasn't been passed yet, but as part of that law, and it is very, very similar to what the Trump administration is proposing, they want to make sure that the burden of proof and the burden of looking at who everybody is called content provenance and that type of thing. We've had the Coalition for Content Provenance and Authentication I've talked about for a very long time, Microsoft, where they said, we're going to come together with hardware, software, operating system, and the so-called established news, mainstream media is going to determine who is telling the truth and who isn't, just like this Israeli embassy wants to do. And then they will shut you down. They will mark you and shut down your content before you can put it up. And so this is something that they've been working on for a long time. Now you see the Trump administration and Republicans like Marsha Blackburn want to shut it down with regulations and with laws. And the way they do that is to take away Section 230 immunity, which says that you're just a host, you're just a public square or whatever, and you don't have any responsibility for the content that is published on your site. They want to make that content published on their site. They want to come after, give them legal liability for anything that's put on there. So you get sued by AIPAC or whatever. So what are the corporations going to do? Well, they're going to err on the side of caution, and they will preemptively shut down anything they think is controversial. That's how these AIPAC people are going to operate. And so if you say something that is, and we've already seen how this works with the COVID MacGuffin, and we've seen how it works really with climate as well. But they really took it to the next level when they got the COVID MacGuffin. You disagree with us, of course, we are science. We are objective and we are right. And if you disagree with us, you'll be punished. Doctors will be punished. Nurses will be punished for the COVID stuff. Anybody who reports on this stuff will be punished. We've all seen how that works. Many of us have felt that firsthand. And so that's what they're going to do. You either toe the official government line, you applaud the federal government, you applaud Israel, or we will shut you down with lawfare, with a threat of lawsuits, or with a threat of fines from the federal government. Well, Marsha Blackburn is saying, we got to get rid of this patchwork of regulation. Folks, that's code. That they always use that when they're about to violate the 10th Amendment, when they're about to centralize command and control over some issue into the federal government. They always talk about a patchwork of regulations. That was what the Constitution was designed for. That's what the 10th Amendment is designed for. It's not a bad thing. And so what they do is they say, we don't want to have 50 different rules about how we operate. We want to have one set of rules. So we want this done in Washington, where we can control the bureaucracy, like the FDA. Huh?
When they say get rid of a patchwork of regulations, what they mean is get rid of decentralization of control, get rid of separation of powers.
And what they're saying is, I know that I can own people like Fauci and the FDA and these other people. I can buy them off. So I want all the regulations to be in Washington so that I can get through and I can shut down my competitors, or I can shut down people that disagree with me. That's the way this is going to go. We've seen this for the longest time in terms of using banks as a know your customer rule and requiring the banks to do that. Now they're going to require all the software companies to do this. whether it's going to be a social media site or whether it's going to be something like Substack, or if it's going to be an operating system. They're going to put the burden on the corporations, and the corporations will either go out of business or they will become spies and enforcers for the government. And so we'll have a patchwork of Stasi is what we'll have, yes.
And it goes a lot farther with the software that isn't run by corporations. Stuff that's small-scale open source is largely going to be phased out. There was a story of the calculator where it's a small team that, or maybe even just one person that's putting together an open source calculator, which matches the definition of a operating system by these laws. So they said, all right, this is no longer a California legal calculator because they don't want to get involved with all the liability of that.
Well, you can't have a patchwork of businesses. We have to have a few businesses that run and own everything. And that's the way you do it. What Marsha Blackburn is doing, what the Trump White House is doing as well. And so one of the things that you had Joe Kent talk about was he was talking about how they shut down the Epstein investigations. He says, funny how turning on Israel prompts an FBI investigation, but being mentioned thousands of times in the Epstein files does not. And that's where we are, as a matter of fact. So America throws its service members into an unjust war for Israel. This is from Brian McGlinchey on his site, Stark Realities. Get ready to be sued because Israel doesn't like that kind of talk. President Trump's decision to join Israel in launching a regime change war in Iran has so far cost the lives of 13 service members. More than 200 have been wounded, dozens seriously. Among them are individuals who've suffered traumatic brain injuries, burns, and shrapnel wounds. One was facing potential amputation of an arm or leg. This is just a start, folks. When they foolishly decide they're going to do amphibious landings with the kinds of drones and other things like that we've got, this is basically just going to be slaughter. They're victims of a betrayal perpetrated by their president and of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who cast them into an unconstitutional war of aggression, packaged in lies and initiated to advance the agenda of a foreign government, Israel. And so, again, you've got Joint Chiefs of Staff. And when you look at this, understand that most of these people who are in this position, these generals, and we've got, I forget how many times, it's something like 5 or 6 times the number of generals, maybe more, that we had during all of World War II. It has become a very political position. And these people are very different than people like Colonel McGregor. These people are toadies. They will do whatever the president tells them to do because they want to advance. U.S. casualties comprise a small subset of the total bloodshed. In executing this unjust war, Americans have collectively inflicted far more death and dismemberment than they have endured, teaming up with their Israeli counterparts to kill more than 3,000 Iranians, including 150 schoolgirls, mostly between the ages of 7 and 12, and whose school was destroyed by Tomahawk cruise missiles at the war's very start. As a matter of fact, as one person pointed out, Trump is upset because he found out that Iran can put up a better fight than a 13-year-old girl can. That was the girl that was released in the Trump Epstein documents. She was 13 years old when he raped and beat her. And this is the guy. This is the guy that, if you join the military, this is the guy that you signed up to follow. I can't believe what this country has become. I'm so disgusted by it. Anyway, Operation Epstein Fury. Combat waged under the U.S. flag rarely has anything to do with American security. Person writing this says, I say this as a former Army Reserve enlistee and a regular Army officer. Anyone thinking of starting or extending a military career should understand that their government may send them to be killed, maimed, or psychologically damaged, and send them to slaughter innocent people abroad, so long as it helps those in power remain in the good graces of the extremists who rule Israel and their powerful collaborators inside the United States. Yeah, it is. You need to understand this. I understood this as a teenager during Vietnam. I just couldn't understand it when I had some friends who joined the military. It's like, why would you go to fight for these people? They don't care a whit about you, and they're so unbelievably corrupt. As a matter of fact, if you want to look at corruption, and you want to look at Pete Hegseth as a walking example of this, and he knows who the people are that he's recruiting, right? This is what the Pentagon is putting out as a recruitment campaign video. It's basically video games and football clips that are intermixed with aerial hits blowing things up. McGregor got it right when he said every time you hear Pete Hegseth talk, he sounds like a wannabe high school football coach. And that's what they've got here. They've got football hits even as the bombs go off, right? Watch this. Look at this. Yeah. Hegseth is going after males. He's not going after the females like Biden did. Well, you get the idea. Mindless, stupid, idiotic. It's not a game, folks. It really isn't, in spite of the fact that Hegseth thinks that it is.
His other commercial was a literal game. They had a bunch of video game stuff from Wii U interspliced with the bomb footage.
Yeah. And that's the way this guy sees it. And he thinks, I guess he grew up playing video games, getting tattooed and thinking about the Crusades. And that's another example. I think the Crusades were a big black eye on so-called Christendom. That's when Western civilization got it wrong. Went out, initiated a war of aggression for territory, saying, we're doing it for God, right? That's exactly what Pete Hegseth is doing. He's got all these Crusader tattoos on, and he thinks that the phrase, blessed be the Lord who has trained my hands for warfare and my fingers for battle, he thinks that's about literally going out and killing other people. That's not at all what it's about. As a Christian, he should know better. The people who are mentoring him should know better and should call him out on that. Where is Doug Wilson with all this stuff? Doesn't he realize that as Christians, we don't fight against flesh and blood. We fight against principalities and powers and spiritual wickedness in high places, as he is a good example of this. We fight against deception and lies. We fight against the efforts to control our minds. That's where the battle is. The spiritual battle is much more important than the physical battle. Pete Hegseth doesn't understand that. Of course, neither does Netanyahu, but Hegseth ought to understand that if he is a professing Christian. He doesn't like to take questions about war crimes, but these questions are going to be following him. Listen to this. You had a reporter start to ask him a question about his war crimes, and he's getting a long, long list of war crimes, and he immediately just deflects to somebody else.
The president will look at what makes the most sense going forward. Appreciate that question. Yes, right here.
War crime, is that the policy of the U.S. military now?
Thank you, Secretary Nixon.
Yep. Can't ask me about war crimes.
The Vice President has often...
Yeah, it is the Department of War Crimes, the Department of War Crimes under War Pete. Under international law, a war of aggression is considered a supreme war crime unto itself. So we can talk about going back and machine gunning people who are shipwrecked. That is obviously a war crime. We could also talk about war of aggressions where you initiate it. You know, when Hitler invades another country or when Putin invades another country, it's wrong. It's also wrong when Trump and War Pete do it as well. Everybody knows that the initiator is the one who starts the war, is the aggressor, and the one who is in the wrong. So this one was launched on false premises, contrary to the U.S.-Israeli narrative. Number one, Iran was not developing a nuclear weapon. We saw this from inspectors. We saw from what the Omani guy brought back. He said, hey, I don't think that these two real estate guys who are Zionists, I don't think that Witkoff and Jared Kushner are going to portray this as reasonable. So he flew back to the United States to say, look at what they've agreed to. They've agreed to take this stuff out and have inspectors to look at it. They didn't want to hear it. They wanted their war of aggression because that's what Netanyahu wanted. The Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, this week testified that Iran had made, quote, no efforts, unquote, to rebuild its enrichment capacity after it was devastated by last summer's bombing. Note that in 2005, the supreme leader, who is now dead, Ali Khamenei, issued a fatwa, and he asserted that the production, this is quote, the production, the stockpiling, and the use of nuclear weapons are forbidden under Islam, and that the Islamic Republic of Iran shall never acquire these weapons. And so they collaborated to kill him nevertheless. Now that he's gone, they have a different spiritual leader. And quite frankly, when you look at nuclear proliferation, the policies of Trump and Iran are going to be creating nuclear proliferation. The lesson from this attack is that the U.S. and Israel cannot be appeased. They want your destruction, pure and simple. And everybody else, as Trump is going around the world threatening everybody around the world, whether it's Greenland or Cuba, you name it, everybody else that he's threatening is looking at this and saying, well, we need to have nuclear weapons as well. That seems to be the only thing that deters this madman is nuclear weapons. Number two, Iran did not stray from the 2015 nuclear deal until Trump did. When Trump withdrew from the United States from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, Iran was in full compliance. Among other things, it required Iran to eliminate its medium-enriched uranium, slash its cache of low-enriched uranium by 98%, limit future enrichment to 3%, agree to even more external monitoring than it was already submitting to, and render its heavy water reactor worthless by filling it with concrete. After Trump withdrew the United States from the agreement in 2018 in his first term and reinstated sanctions, Iran waited a year but then began straying from its own commitments, using elevated enrichment as a lever to push for a new agreement. Iran says that the JCPOA permitted it to suspend its commitments after Trump's withdrawal, citing language governing material breaches and significant non-performance. So it's like you withdrew from the treaty first, and we're doing this and doing it as a negotiating chip. Number three, Iran wasn't the problematic negotiating partner. Well, we can all see the perfidy, the treachery of these real estate dealers like Witkoff and Kushner, who had intimate ties to the Israeli government and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Remember when there was this back and forth about a disagreement about what Israel and the U.S. were going to do, and people said, maybe there's a split between them. They said, no, there's no split. You have Kushner and Witkoff talk every day to Netanyahu. These guys who were never confirmed, who have a made-up position, a special envoys, they speak every day and get a briefing from Netanyahu and from Mossad. Traitors. They're traitors just like Jonathan Pollard. Witkoff is known as a staunch supporter of Israel. He counts pro-Israel megadonor Miriam Adelson as a, quote, dear friend. He carries a custom pager that was gifted to him by Netanyahu and senior Mossad officials in reference to the operation in which Israel remotely detonated thousands of pagers that allegedly belonged to Hezbollah officials. Kushner, meanwhile, has been steeped in pro-Israel community his entire life. He counts Netanyahu as a family friend. As a matter of fact, a family friend who would come and visit them when he was young. A family friend who would come and visit them and sleep in Jared's bed. I think it is a damning association to Bibi to be affiliated with that family. Many people look at it and say, well, it's the other way around. And of course, who is the worst character? When you look at Jared Kushner's father, what he did was had allegations and charges against him for fraud. His brother-in-law, Jared's uncle, was somebody who was going to be testifying against him, perhaps to save himself as a deal that he worked out. And so Jared Kushner's father decided to set up his brother-in-law, Jeffrey Epstein style. That's the way these people think. And so what he did was he arranged for a prostitute to seduce him and to film it, just like Jeffrey Epstein, then blackmailed him. And they exposed that, And it was Chris Christie who was the prosecutor. That's why Jared Kushner always came after Chris Christie. See, it's Chris Christie's problem for prosecuting this Jeffrey Epstein fraudster. He set up a honeypot prostitute, filmed it, and blackmailed the guy. Now, Trump gave Jared Kushner's father, who did that, set up the honeypot, filmed and blackmailed his brother-in-law. He gave him a full pardon in 2020, and then he began his second term by making this criminal the ambassador to France. Is it any wonder that they hate us in France? At least they hate Trump. Hopefully they realize that not everybody in America supports Trump. After learning that Witkoff was grossly mischaracterizing Iran's stance, if not outright lying about it, that was when Oman's foreign minister, who had been the mediator in the discussions, made an urgent trip to Washington. He said, we regarded Witkoff and Kushner as Israeli assets that dragged a president into a war that he wanted to get out of. Well, I'm not so sure about that. I think the president is an Israeli asset, frankly. Manchurian candidate. Maybe a Manischewitz candidate. I don't know. Iran's ballistic missile program wasn't built for offense. The White House claimed that Iran was building a conventional shield that would enable future nuclear blackmail, but anyone who's been paying attention could see the 12-day war when Iran effectively used cutting-edge ballistic missiles to retaliate against Israeli aggression. They have not been the aggressor throughout all of this stuff. Everything has been in response. So Israel or the U.S. will escalate, and they'll say, if you continue to escalate, we're going to do such and such. They continue to escalate. So then they do what they warned they were going to do. And that's where we are right now in terms of the tit for tat, back and forth over infrastructure. And if they escalate that over infrastructure, Iran has promised, and it will follow through, that they will basically set the Mideast on fire. And that's exactly what Israel would like, because Israel wants to take over the entire Middle East, which means you burn it down, you bankrupt it, then it's easier for you to take it over. That use is consistent with U.S. intelligence characterization of Iran's military posture as primarily defensive. Iran's conventional military strategy is primarily based on deterrence and the ability to retaliate against an attacker. Number 5, Iran has not been waging war on the United States for 47 years. I've talked about that for the longest time. To the contrary, the hostilities have been overwhelmingly originated in Washington. Any survey of history should go back 73 years. That's what I've been saying, to 1953. We overthrew their elected government and put in a king, and the CIA and Mossad trained his secret police, brutal murderers, torturers, to shut down any political opposition. The Shah, Persian for king. The ledger should also include U.S. support for Iraq's 8-year war on Iran in the 1980s, and that was the context for the 1983 bombing of troops that were there. And David Stockman has talked about this. David Stockman was in on the security group meetings that were being held in the Reagan administration. He saw what was happening there, and he knows why that happened and why Reagan pulled out. Because we had been supporting Saddam Hussein against Iran, and we were escalating it with troops. And so they decided at that point, we're not going to get involved in this back and forth. The central line in the so-called 47-year war narrative blames Iran for killing thousands of Americans in Iraq by supposedly directing Shia militias to target Americans and equipping them with improvised explosive devices, IEDs. In a concise treatment on his Substack, former Marine officer Matthew Ho, who led counter-IED efforts in Iraq, dismantled that well-entrenched narrative. His key points were the great majority of American service members killed in Iraq died at the hands of Sunni resistance groups. You understand? Sunni is Iraq. That's their strain of Islam predominantly. And so there's Sunnis, and then there's the Shias, which are in Iran. They're just as different as the Wahhabists in Saudi Arabia are from people. So it's not this monolithic thing. And the political groups are aligned with this as well. So that is also different. Iran provided some support to the Shia militias, but Ho calls out the hypocrisy of U.S. officials saying that Iran alone has blood on its hands pinning such blame on U.S.-aligned Gulf monarchies that backed the Sunni militias in Iraq. And finally here, Iran isn't the world's leading sponsor of terrorism. Top contenders would include Saudi Arabia and, yes, the United States and Israel in terms of using fear and threats and violence to achieve social or political goals. That's what terrorism is. We do that all the time. As we've seen in the case of Cuba and others, you've got American secretaries of state that have full discretion to slap the label of state sponsor of terror on. They can put it on, they can take it off. There is no process, there is no burden of proof required. It's whatever they wish it to be. Well, Bibi had his appearance, and I don't know. Wow, look at this. Now, I haven't seen anybody come up with any. It appears that he has now finally appeared in public, which is really kind of strange. I really was thinking, I don't understand why they put out so many obvious AI fakes unless they wanted to invite speculation. But he appeared in public, and what he had to say was despicable.
If you want proof that Iran endangers the entire world, the last 48 hours have given it. In the last 48 hours, Iran targeted a civilian area. They're doing that as a mass murder weapon. Luckily, no one was killed, but that's due to luck, not their intention. Their intention is to murder civilians.
Well, he would know, wouldn't he?
They fired
what he did in Gaza,
Jerusalem, right next to the holy sites of the three monotheistic faiths, the Western Wall, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And by dint of a miracle, again, none of them were hurt, but they were targeting the holy sites of the three major monotheistic religions. Third, they fired an intercontinental ballistic missile on Diego Garcia. That's 4,000 kilometers. I've been warning all the time. They have now the capacity to reach deep into Europe. They already have fired on a European country, Cyprus. They are putting everyone in their sights. And fourth, they're stopping a maritime international route, energy route, and trying to blackmail the entire world. What more proof do you need that this regime that threatens the entire world has to be stopped?
I can think of two regimes that threaten the entire world as well. But while he's talking about that, people were quick to point out the hypocrisy of talking about focusing on civilian targets. Israel has been doing that in spades for years. As a matter of fact, here's a video put out by Israel that is boasting about what they have done to Gaza. Look at how they have destroyed Gaza as they fly over it. I mean, they literally have bombed it to nothing. And this is a good example, quite frankly, of why we cannot win these wars and regime change by aerial bombing alone. We've had this type of destruction happen in North Korea during the Korean War. We had Curtis LeMay, built his reputation on his bombing campaigns. And basically, he did this kind of devastation to North Korea as well. We lost that war. And of course, when you look at what happened with Japan, you had the firebombing of Tokyo was worse than the nuclear weapons of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And yet it did not bring them into submission. It was not even the nuclear weapons by themselves. It was also the Russian invasion of Manchuria that had a lot to do with that. And so Bibi is very upset about the fact that they would actually retaliate and bomb the civilian cities of places that supposedly only go the other direction, right? They are fair game to be bombed, but do not turn around and bomb Israel.
If anyone needed an explanation of why Iran is the enemy of civilization and the enemy...
We need an explanation for what you did in Gaza.
You got it in the last 48 hours. In the last 48 hours, they fired a terror weapon on civilians, on children. There's a children's nursery here. There's an old person's home here. Civilians, families, they fired
what about the girls' school?
And often they use cluster bombs, which are forbidden by international law.
You use white phosphorus.
Is that they fired on Jerusalem right next to the holy places. They sent ballistic missiles that could have destroyed the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
Well, you get the idea. He's basically repeating his line multiple places. And again, I look at this and it's like, I don't understand why they put out those obviously fake AI videos. But evidently, the guy is not in a coma and alive. I haven't seen anybody pull back and offer any evidence of why they don't believe that was him there. When we look at Gaza, this is, again, you want to talk about destruction, take a look at Gaza. And we have the propaganda that is rolling out. This is from the Israeli government. I first saw this and it's like, wait a minute, he's going to show damage in Israel? He's going to go to jail for 5 years.
Look at this. This is the face of evil. This is the Iranian regime, ballistic terror. This can now happen in Rome, in Vienna, in Berlin, in Paris. The only question is whether or not the Iranian regime will push the button. And we know the Iranian regime, and we know that they already pushed it.
And we know that Israel has pushed the button. And we know that the U.S. has pushed the button. This is why you don't start wars. Innocent people die all the time. It destroys areas, this whole broken window fallacy, and people like Lindsey Graham on the sidelines rubbing their hands in glee saying, we're going to make a lot of money out of this. This is why war is horrible. It's why starting one is a war crime. But they don't care about that aspect of it. As a matter of fact, they are starting a war and bombing civilian populations in Lebanon as the Israelis are complaining about what is happening to them. This is what it looks like in Lebanon as they're blowing up bridges, leaving people stranded who can't get to the hospital because they've isolated them now with the blown bridges. One person who is victorious, and I don't know how to pronounce that last word there, says, I don't care about temples. Yeah, I don't either. And I don't care about a piece of land. There isn't any piece of land. There isn't any line on a map that's worth killing people for. The U.S. list of... yes, go ahead, Lance.
I just thought it was funny when he was saying the most holy places for Christianity. I didn't know Christianity had a especially holy place.
Well, real Christianity doesn't. Real Christianity understands that we are the temple of God, that we are the living stones, that Christ is the foundation, not Israel, and certainly not a political entity that is out there. So the U.S. list of terrorist organizations is at this point really laughable because we take groups off willy-nilly based on whether we like them politically or not. And so what do they want in Iran? Well, what the Israelis want to do is to break Iran apart. They want to make it look like Syria. That is from John Mearsheimer, which is absolutely right. And he's made the point. He said, why is it that we have so much money being given to politicians by AIPAC? Well, it's because what they want our government to do is not in our interest. You wouldn't have to pay them to do these things if it was in the interest of Americans. But since it's not in the interest of Americans, you have all this bribery that's going on by AIPAC because it's contrary to the interest of America. They have to pay them money to be traitors to us. It's a means of achieving an expansionist dream of greater Israel. And I think this Lebensraum, as Hitler called it, I think that is what is essentially behind the... we're going to continue to go on a little bit longer because we missed like a first hour and 15 minutes of the show. So we're going to get in at least 2 hours of the show. I've got a lot that I want to say today. And we had a lot of technical issues. It appears they've been worked out. Thank you guys for doing that. They worked real hard on getting that done. And we got bit by a couple of hardware, software changes that came in. But I think really what is happening is they want to expand their territory. That's usually why you have these wars of aggression. It's usually why you've got people like Genghis Khan that Bibi Netanyahu thinks is so great, so much greater than Jesus, he said. It's because Genghis Khan wanted territory. He had the largest contiguous empire that's ever been in terms of landmass. Yeah, the British Empire, sun never set on it, but it was all these different disconnected areas. He had this massive contiguous empire because he was invading and killing people brutally. that the kind of person you want to look up to? Is that the kind of person that really advances civilization? I don't think so. We don't set our calendars by Genghis Khan's birth. We try to do that with the Lord Jesus Christ, but not with him. And when we look at the Germans and they needed more room to grow for their master race. Same thing is happening with the chosen people of Israel. They need more room. They need all of the Middle East, and they would like to burn it down so they can take it. The suffering that springs from this war of aggression isn't confined to the United States, Israel, Iran, and Gulf states hosting U.S. bases. People around the world are already coping with growing scarcity and increasing costs of oil and gas. This Pandora's box of harms, the world supply of medicine, is in growing jeopardy. Nearly half of U.S. generic prescriptions originate in India, which relies on the Strait of Hormuz for the arrival of key inputs in drug manufacturing. The price U.S. corn farmers are paying for fertilizer has jumped upwards of 20%. And this article here is not talking about what's going to happen to the advanced semiconductor industry when they lose their supply of helium. If the war continues and the Strait of Hormuz remains closed, it's certain to result in global health catastrophe, starvation, malnutrition, a devastating economic depression, surging crime, and social unrest. Folks, this is what the fourth turning is really about. And that's what I said, is that Donald Trump is a one-man fourth turning. Global depression, global war, these things go hand in hand. And he was doing some of this for the World Economic Forum in his first term. That's what was happening with the lockstep lockdown that was happening around the world. This, however, is not so much the UN and these globalist public health organizations, but this is pretty much Donald Trump, the Manchurian candidate for Israel, who is running this stuff through. Never forget that. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back.
Making sense common again. You're listening to The David Knight Show.
Elvis.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles.
And the sweet sounds of Motown. Find them on the Oldies channel at apsradio.com.
Well, and again, thank you for joining us, and we are going to put together the show in a proper format here. And because we'd go about 5 minutes and the thing would crash. We had all kinds of issues in terms of things that were happening with audio feedback and duplication and other things like that. So we're going to put this together. We're going to keep running this for a bit longer here. I'm not sure how long we're going to go until I get finished with some of the things that I really wanted to cover today, however long that takes. So we may have more than a 2-hour show. We may have more than a 3-hour show. I don't know. But stick around. We're going to put that together, and it's been something of a mess today, but we're going to keep going as long as the system doesn't start crashing again on us. I want to talk a little bit more about Netanyahu and his love for Genghis Khan and his hatred for Jesus Christ. And he calls that fake news. I say it isn't. I say that it showed us exactly where this guy is coming from. Look, if you want a comparison of a world leader and what Netanyahu wants to be, he wants to be Genghis Khan. He doesn't want to follow the Lord Jesus Christ. As a matter of fact, when you look at this, it really is the synagogue of Satan. He's secular, he is atheistic, and it is, when he starts using these terms like Amalek, he's talking about genocide, and he's trying to piggyback onto real Judaism, the Old Testament, just like Pete Hegseth is trying to piggyback himself onto real Christianity, but doing a pretty poor job of it and getting rid of the ethics that are involved there. Yeah, Netanyahu is not even Jewish, folks. If you want to define Judaism as followers, he doesn't follow the Mosaic law. He doesn't, these people who look at all this stuff, they only look at the promise of land, like I said before about Ben Shapiro, when he was asked point blank, well, do you think Moses parted the Red Sea for the people? I don't know. I don't believe that. I don't believe in miracles like that. I just know, though, that the promise of the land from God is for me. That's all I care about, right? I don't care about the rest of this stuff. And again, Genghis Khan is pretty much forgotten after 2,000 years, except for those who are full of ambition and greed and those who want to be like him. By the way, Genghis Khan can't give you eternal life. Just to point out a simple comparison here between him and the Lord Jesus Christ. Nobody marks time by Genghis Khan. The Bible embraces people who trust in God, not in their chariots or horses. That was the lesson over and over and over again that had to be learned by the people of Israel in the Old Testament. They constantly were putting their trust in their military prowess or in their leaders or whatever. That's why God raised up people like David to fight Goliath. That's why he always kept lecturing them. He says, "Is my hand too short to deliver you?" And he tells Samuel, "They have not rejected you, they have rejected me." And they continue to do that. So again, you look at somebody who trusts in their chariots and horses, somebody who sees goodness as weakness. What does that tell you? It tells you that this guy could very easily do exactly the types of things that we've seen him do. So this ought to be a wake-up call for the so-called Christian Zionists. And again, to understand what a contradicting oxymoron that term is. So he says it is fake news, that it was taken out of context. And yet, when you see what he's doing, it is really, his aspirations are the same as Genghis Khan. No wonder he pulls this guy out. So the Japanese, there's a good example in terms of learning a lesson. I think the Japanese, at least some of them, have learned the lesson from World War II. We called it a day of infamy, and it was. And I don't care, regardless of, I do care what FDR did in order to passively, aggressively lure them into making the first move, but they still made the first move. That's like somebody who kills his wife saying, yeah, but she was nagging me and doing this and that. That still doesn't justify the escalation. It still doesn't justify the over-the-top violence. Is not justified. So it was a day of infamy. It was a sneak attack. It was treachery. And so as I played for you last week, you had Donald Trump was talking when he had the Japanese Prime Minister woman come in. He was asked a question by the Japanese press. Why didn't you tell us anything about this? You just sprung this on everybody.
Of course, no, Japan and US are very good friends. But one question, why didn't you tell US allies in Europe and Asia, like Japan, about the war before attacking Iran? So we are very confused about we Japanese citizens.
Well, one thing, you don't want to signal too much, when we
For one thing, Trump doesn't have any allies.
And we didn't
doesn't want any
about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay, why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay,
you can see how uncomfortable she is. I'm going to play for you her comment.
This could be Do you believe in surprise?
Well, the first thing is the Japanese reporter was saying, why don't you talk to your allies about this? Well, because Trump doesn't see any allies. As a matter of fact, he treats his allies worse than he treats his enemies. Now, Japan didn't tell America about that because America was not their ally. America was their enemy and already shown it that way. It still does not excuse what they did. But here's what the Japanese prime minister said.
I will never set foot in the United States again. This trip to the White House was the most humiliating meeting of my political career. As the Prime Minister of Japan, I traveled to the United States with full sincerity to meet with our ally, only to be met with a series of disrespectful and dismissive treatments. Upon my arrival at the White House, they did not even prepare an official welcome ceremony. I was made to enter discreetly through a side entrance, as if we were nothing more than insignificant visitors. What infuriated me even more was that Trump openly joked about the Pearl Harbor attack right in front of me, showing complete disregard for how embarrassed I would be. During the subsequent talks, Trump firmly demanded that we must cooperate with the United States in its military operations against Iran. He even used Japan's crude oil supply as leverage to coerce Japan into getting involved in an irrelevant war. In this so-called ally meeting, I saw no negotiation or respect whatsoever, only one-sided humiliation and demands. I will never set foot in the United States again.
Well, she's learned a lesson. She's learned a lesson about Trump, and she's learned a lesson about Pearl Harbor, for example. She said he knew how embarrassed and ashamed that she would be, right? Where is Trump's shame? He has none. He has no embarrassment. He has no shame for what he did with children. He has no shame for the wars that he has started. The man has no shame for anything that he's done, including that. You should be ashamed of Pearl Harbor, and she was embarrassed about it. And he should be ashamed for what he has done as well. And that's the key thing. You know, when Netanyahu talks about this, he says, well, it's not enough to be moral. It's not enough to be just. It's not enough to be right. Yes, it is. You are absolutely wrong about that. That is what we try to do. That is what we aspire to do. Nobody does that perfectly. He should know from Isaiah. No, there's none who's righteous, not one. Everybody has turned to their own way, followed their own things, done what they feel like is right in their own eyes. But to give up on all this and say, well, we don't want to have any morality, we don't want to have any justice, we don't want to do what's right, that is Netanyahu telling you what he is about, what his government is about. You know, that's why, by the way, everybody's turned their own way and nobody can brag about being moral or right. That's why you need Christ. That's why everybody needs Christ, because there is no one who is righteous. And even though these people are Abraham's descendants, it is Christ through whom God blesses all nations, not through Israel and not through people who tell you that you don't need justice. You don't need to support what is good and right, who has contempt for that. And even talks about it. He says, history proves that Jesus Christ has no advantage over Genghis Khan, that aggression will overcome moderation. Well, I would say that history has taught us exactly the opposite. I think Christ has had a far, far greater impact on history. You look at Genghis Khan, he admires him because he got more land than anybody else did. Well, good for him. Whoop-de-doo. Take it to the grave and tell that to Jesus when you see him. So you trust your chariots and horses and trust your politicians too, because that's what they trust in. He says, let me be clear. I did not denigrate Jesus Christ at my news conference this morning. Well, what he did was he denigrated the pursuit of justice, the pursuit of doing what's right and what is good. That's what he denigrated. And he's been denigrating that his entire time as a leader of Israel. As a matter of fact, he was the guy who was pushing the COVID shots from Pfizer on his own people and offering his own people as lab rats. What a disgusting leader Netanyahu is. He embraces this Machiavellian power. He says that might makes right and that evil is going to triumph if it's strong enough. No, evil will never triumph because God is not evil, because God will triumph. So, he did denigrate. The question is, and it's asking the Old Testament, why do the nations rage? against the Lord and his anointed, his Messiah, his Christ. Yeah, they imagine a vain thing. They think that it matters. What does it gain a man to win all of Manchuria and lose his own soul? I would say that to Genghis Khan, and I would say that to Bibi Netanyahu. And so the question is, who do you trust? Do you trust in yourself? Do you trust in your prepping ability? Do you trust your government? Or do you trust God who created the universe? And that's why we ask, why do they imagine such a vain thing? It is the worst example of atheism, I think. And so with all of this happening, one guy called out Dan Bongino because of the Epstein stuff. He says, you're a pedophile protector. Dan Bongino didn't like it, and the protector of the pedophile protector, his security guard, tells the guy right away, you're about to be trespassed out of here. I've not used it. I've not seen that as a verb used that way. So, yeah, you're going to trespass against him with your speech. We're going to throw you out. We got people all over the place, every aspect of government in every country right now. Hates free speech, wants to punish free speech, wants to control speech.
Don't be a coward, Dan.
You're going to be trespassed from the property, okay? This might be, you might feel like you're in
God's watching you, man. We reap what we sow. God's watching us. Go all out against the deep state. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of Satan, man. I'm telling you.
You're a big shit.
I'm ready.
Why don't you do it?
I'm ready to be in Congress. I'm ready. I plan on it.
Go volunteer.
I'm not afraid of Hillary. I'm not.
Yeah, why don't you do something? He puts it back on him. He doesn't say that. And then I was talking over, but you can hear the guy that was in the program with Ivan Reichland, a constitutional attorney, former Army Green Beret. He starts calling him a pedophile protector as well. There wasn't a lot of love for Dan Bongino after he got off of that TV program, 700 Club.
It's less that he's afraid of them and more that he's working for them, though.
He's afraid not to get the money, right? That's going to come out of this. And so that's the way the Trump people, I guess, are all instinctively respond. They're asked a pointed question about something they're doing that's wrong or something that they should have done that they didn't do. Their response is to attack you personally. Says, well, why don't you do something about it? And he says, I'm going to run for Congress and everything. So anyway, try to flip it back on him. This is just like Bondi does. No answer, attack. It's what the guy they follow does, Donald Trump, as a matter of fact. So Ivan Reichland escalated the situation further, launching a barrage of accusations at Bongino, calling him a pedophile protector as well. Reichland responded with profanity-laced insults, shouting, I was a cop for 9 years. You are a pedophile protector, before adding further expletives at Bongino before he was escorted away. He was trespassed out of there, we should say, I guess. And so, as Netanyahu says, this is Dr. Simon Godek, Netanyahu says, if anyone needed an explanation as to why Iran is the enemy of civilizations, I played those clips for you. He was going around saying that multiple times. And the enemy and the danger to the entire world, you got it in the past 48 hours. They fired a terror weapon at civilians. They fired a terror weapon on children. And so as Simon says, he says, Iran hits back once and suddenly it's horror. While Gaza's kids were just collateral damage. Give me a break. And again, that is what we previously saw there. And again, when you look at all of the AI stuff, that was really strange. And again, there was for exactly the amount of time that somebody would be sitting Shiva for someone who died in the Jewish religion, Netanyahu's son was completely silent, very active on social media otherwise. And then there's also the wing of Zion, Netanyahu's kind of his Air Force One, if you will. That flew on the day that he was alleged to have been injured, that flew to Germany. And it is still in Germany. It's been there for many days. And German people are putting pictures up of it still there and asking what's going on with it. So I'm not really sure about it, but I haven't seen anybody come up with a avatar-like explanation for him going to these sites and engaging with people on the streets after these attacks. But what does that tell us about what Donald Trump is saying. Donald Trump says, and Pete Hegseth says, we've taken out their ability to launch missiles. We have complete air superiority. And then right as he's saying that, an F-35 state-of-the-art is shot down, I should say. And we have a dozen of these Reaper drones have been shot down. And then they escalate the amount of missiles that they're sending. Now, the missile that went to Diego Garcia, which is about 4,000 kilometers, about twice the range of what they thought was the maximum range for Iran. Iran said they didn't fire that missile. Well, if they didn't fire it, who did? I mean, are they lying? Certainly they could lie. For the most part, though, we've seen most of the lies have been coming from the U.S. and Israeli side. And we know they're lying because even with a fog of war, if somebody says, they don't have the ability to launch anymore, and yet you see what is happening in Tel Aviv and other places. We have, let's see if I can show you the picture here of Tel Aviv. That is there. Yeah, here it is right here. They say they don't have the capability to launch missiles. And then you see this happening. Massive destruction in Tel Aviv, massive destruction in Dimona and Arad. So you got 3 cities that took massive hits from Iranian missiles while we're told that they have taken this out. So something is not quite right on our side in terms of what we're being told. So did Israel fire a missile at Diego Garcia? Was it kind of a false flag attack? Was it kind of a USS Liberty attack? Because that is what they're using this for in terms of saying, well, see, Iran is such a bigger threat than you thought. So who knows what's happening with that? Under Biden, the CIA had warned that traditional motherhood and homemaking were signs of white extremism. And we need to understand, as we see this memo leaked, we need to understand that feminism and drugs and so many things originated with the CIA. They have been not only the enemy of peace and getting the United States into one scrape after the other, but they've also been instrumental in terms of trying to destroy the fabric of our society, the family. The CIA says intelligence assessment reveals top to bottom bias at Biden's CIA, an agency with critical intelligence responsibilities, was spending its resources targeting women promoting motherhood because they have been promoting feminism and the rest of the stuff for a very long time from their inception. We assess the female members have been emerging as key players of the transnational white, racially and ethnically motivated violent extremist movement, taking on diverse roles to advance white goals, including the white REMVE view of traditional motherhood and successfully participating in newer roles in propaganda and recruitment. They are anti-family, they're anti-white, and that is what they have done, just as they have pushed drugs, coups, assassinations, and wars. Why do we continue to have the CIA? Can we clean out this nest of vipers in the United States? That really is the true deep state. They said and the Biden administration, the CIA, was writing documents that were attacking people who lauded motherhood and homemaking as women's most important responsibility. It used to be that the government, the politicians are made fun of because you could always count on them for supporting mom and apple pie. Well, they don't support mom anymore. I don't know about apple pie. I guess they'll be coming for that next.
Bug pie is going to be the next one.
That's right. No apples, just bugs. Yeah.
No families and the bug pie.
Eat the bugs, not the apple. Eat the worm out of the apple. Well, I'll tell you what, the CIA is the worm in the apple of America. We will be right back.
You're listening to The David Knight Show.
APS Radio delivers multiple channels of music right to your mobile device. Get the APS Radio app today and listen wherever you go.
Well, certainly we can hope that maybe there will be a move back away from the mutually assured destruction of global energy supplies as well as critical infrastructure. At some point, you got to pull back away from this. And hopefully there'll be some adults in a room somewhere with Trump who can reason this guy off of the ledge that he's about to jump off and take the rest of us with him. Thank you to South Coast Painter. Thank you very much. Gifted 5 subscriptions to the David Knight Show. I appreciate that very much. Appreciate that. That's about $25, Lance said. And CJP Rumble says, but MAGA thinks she's in love. They said that she loved him. That's the Japanese prime minister. Yeah, well, she set the record straight, didn't she? The most important thing about it is that she is embarrassed about what Japan has done. And, Trump is boasting he can do the same thing. He's not embarrassed at all. The man has absolutely no shame. And we have seen that in his personal relationships with his wives. We have seen that in his relationship with people who work for him. And we've seen that in his relationship to the Constitution and to MAGA itself. The man has no shame. Soylent Goy said, there's no more mature statesmen, just immature fools. Absolutely, I agree with that. As a matter of fact, speaking of immature fools, let's talk a little bit about Pete Hegseth. He has invoked the divine purpose to justify military might, and he's got the left absolutely apoplectic. They don't like it when you mention Christ and you talk about God. They don't like that at all. And they really hate it when you connect it with war. And I hate it when they connect it with war as well. So they said, Pete has imbued U.S. military actions with a Christian moral underpinning that suggests that they are divinely sanctioned. There is no moral underpinning for this war in the way that he's conducting it. The Christian underpinning, the Christian understanding of war is it's only undertaken to preserve innocent life. It's only undertaken to stop aggression, to stop people like Pete Hegseth, to stop people like Donald Trump. That's why you have wars. And the entire world understands that. There's certain things that for the most part, we talk about it, the libertarians would talk about it as natural law. They would make a distinction between natural law and what they call nomos, which would be like, here's the speed limit that you can go on this particular street, something that is arbitrary there that not everybody would understand or necessarily even agree with. But when it comes to natural law, that would be things like don't steal, don't kill, those types of things. Almost all cultures and countries have embraced natural law. We instinctively understand that. We all have that much enlightenment from God that we understand basic morality. Now, you do have societies that have slipped into cannibalism, and you can sever that conscience that you have, and you can do that. Multiple generations can do that. But for the most part, people understand with natural law what is basically right and wrong. And I got to say that Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump certainly don't understand the very basics even of fundamental morality and natural law. Military might is not a thing that God values, and we shouldn't be valuing that. Especially the issues are, how are you going to use it? Are you going to use it for evil? Or are you going to use it for good? And what are you going to trust? Are you going to put your trust in those chariots and horses and those other weapons that you hear him boast about all the time? Are you going to tell everybody that God is on our side? When you couch it in those kinds of terms, that should be a red flag for anybody. God is not on our side. Question is, are we on God's side? That was the question that Joshua put to the people. Who was on the Lord's side? Come over here. And so that is the reality. God is not on the side of the Jews. God is not on the side of the Americans. The question is, are the Jews and the Americans on God's side? That is the true issue. So again and again, we keep seeing this idea that, and it's a false idea given to us, that Judaism is the foundation of Western civilization and the foundation of Christ and of Christianity. That is absolutely not true. As a matter of fact, you have Netanyahu has said, let's see, here it is right here. Where is it? Trying to find, I can't find the clip here. I got too many clips. I'm trying to find Bibi saying the Jews created the USA. Here it is right here.
I said, Mike, that we are fighting today the battle that the Maccabees fought. They fought for the survival of the Jewish people and the Jewish faith against an enemy that wanted to extinguish us, wipe us out from the face of the earth. We were fighting our battle, but we were also fighting the battle of civilization, because our civilization is based on the Judeo-Christian tradition. And if the Maccabees had failed, there'd be no Judaism, there would be no Judeo-Christian civilization.
What is that civilization if you refuse to make a distinction between good and evil? If you pursue power rather than pursuing good and what is right? That is the real question. And that's the question that he needs to ask himself. And I got to say, the foundation of America is Christian. It is not Judaism. There's a movie that's coming out about George Whitefield and the Great Awakening. That was really the foundation of America. And that will be the foundation of America. If America is not destroyed, it will be what reforms America. I'll just give you a little bit of the trailer of this movie about the life of George Whitefield, because it was connected to the Great Awakening, a period of time where people turned back to God in repentance in America.
Arise, O sleeper! Awaken!
Benjamin Franklin, your brother said he could use your help at his print shop. You have my blessing.
Gonna do good things, Pa. Great things.
From the oceans through the valley.
George Whitefield, you will be an extraordinary preacher. Remember the source of your power.
You don't believe the stories from London are true?
I am doubting Whitfield's claim that he can be heard and understood by so many. Without evidence, I won't believe it.
Let us proclaim freedom to the captives! Whom the sun sets free is free indeed!
Have you ever heard a voice like that blast from heaven?
Benjamin Franklin.
Reverend Whitfield, partnering with me would guarantee the maximum benefit to your cause.
A match made in heaven.
Or just a deal made in a print shop.
General George Washington.
Today, we stand in an even darker valley.
The survival of this country must be our chief concern!
This Constitution cannot fail. We cannot let the sun set on this nation.
You are lighting a powder keg, my friend.
When you follow him, you are led by love.
Why can't I get through to you? I choose evidence over faith. Stop trying to change me.
You have promoted the greatest awakening these colonies have ever seen.
You are the lightning bolt, George. I am just the lightning rod.
And who is the source, Ben?
Let them receive your gift of salvation.
One tiny candle illuminates 1,000.
Arise, O sleeper! Awaken!
I show that because we have to take back the history of this country. We have to take back what is true and right from the people, from the ilk of people like Pete Hegseth and Bibi Netanyahu. We had a country that was founded on the Christian values of the gospel, the good news of the Lord Jesus Christ. That is the good news that changes lives. That's the good news that changes nations. And it was not about grabbing as much land as we could, in spite of what people want to make this about. That was true reality of that. The fact is that God blesses those who follow him. not those who follow their own way. And so as all this is happening, you've got Pete Hegseth, who is the crusader. He keeps telling everybody, well, think a crusader for civilization. And you got Netanyahu who says, think Judaism for your civilization. I say we thank God for our civilization. And we give him the credit for that because he's the one who civilizes. It's not the people who are out for a land grab. The Crusaders were they're looking for land. They were not trying to spread the gospel. Take a look at what happened with the Mayflower and why people said they came. It wasn't just for material gain. It wasn't just for their own freedom. It was also to propagate the gospel, the Lord Jesus Christ. Where do we get this idea that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights? Not a master race, not a chosen people based on hereditary issues, but the fact that all men are created equal. That is a Christian understanding. That did not come from Judaism. That did not come from the Crusades. So again, that is the fight that we are in, not the nonsense that's being offered to you by the likes of War Pete Hegseth or by Netanyahu. And as a matter of fact, we should be reminded that there are a lot of Jews who are not Zionist as well.
Zionists purposefully want to involve all Jews in their wars for their benefit, that Jews and the state of Israel are be viewed as one. It is misrepresentation by Zionists that expose Jews as targets for no fault of our own. Yet, Zionists with Netanyahu at the helm will deflect accountability by saying it's about Jews and anti-Semitism, but not about the Israeli government. In truth, Zionists never cared for the safety or security of Jews. It's all about their disgraceful nationalist agendas.
And that's what the Christian nationalists are doing to Christians as well. What the Zionists are doing to the ultra-Orthodox. They hate us for our freedoms, do they? No, they hate us because we have a murderous government. That's why people hate Americans. And the hatred towards Jews is because of what the Jewish government is doing. And they try to put it on the people there. Hegseth has found no shortage of ways to bring his strand of conservative evangelicalism into the Pentagon. He hosts monthly Christian worship services for employees. You might want to step up the frequency of that so that you could actually have some time to read the Bible. That would be an improvement, I think, for your monthly meetings.
Maybe he should go sometime.
What's that?
Or maybe he should attend one of these meetings.
Maybe they should just open up the Bible. Again, we get this kind of nonsense that really bothered me when I heard it. When he quotes in terms of, blessed be the Lord who trains my hands for warfare and my fingers for battle. Continues on and says, the Lord is my rock, my protector, right? Not your chariots and horses. But we also understand as Christians that the true fight is the one that is spiritual, the supernatural fight. The supernatural fight is above the natural. And that's what God is training us for. We're going to be fighting against things like pride and hatred and greed and politics and land and flags and borders, lines on the maps. Hegseth has a history of defending the Crusades. And I say that the Crusades don't need to be defended. They need to be seen as where Christianity went off the rails. The Crusades were not about spreading the gospel. It was about taking land from people in the name of Christ. And that's not what Christ is about. Christ even made it very clear. He said, my kingdom is not of this world. So what is the basis then for the Crusades? What is the basis for all of this support of Israel by Christian Zionists? He wrote that those who enjoy Western civilization, says Hegseth, should thank a crusader. He has tattoos on his arms. Deus Vult, God wills it. Again, this is him saying that he has the divine right to kill people and take their land because it's the will of God for him to do that. He is a false prophet. God did not will the Crusades. His kingdom is not of this world. He said, if it was, my servants would fight. And he did not come to create a massive empire like Genghis Khan. This is a misreading, and this is the thing that is at the heart, I think, of the misunderstanding about Zionism and dispensationalism. They'll always say, well, we take the Bible literally. Well, the Bible is to be taken literally. I mean, I believe that God separated the Red Sea for the Jews and brought them into the Promised Land. But that was a picture of a greater truth, a greater reality for us. And it really is about whether or not we follow God and put our faith in him. You know, when they misread this, what is happening with the Zionists is they're looking at this just like the Crusaders. Oh, we got to get Jerusalem. We got to do this for God. We got to take this land for God and put our flag up on it. That is absolutely not what God is about. God is not about wars of aggression to take these types of things. And when you look at what's going on in Venezuela and Cuba, they are equally unjust to what is happening in Iran. Trump and Pete are thugs, they're bullies, they're war criminals, they're murderers, and they murder their own people as well. He says, one Hegseth critic, a scholar at Georgetown, says the U.S. voluntarily going to war against a Muslim country with a military under the leadership of Pete Hegseth is exactly the kind of scenario that people like me were warning about before the election and throughout the appointment process. Well, again, here's the danger that Christians should see. Whenever you merge church and state, what you wind up with is state. The merger, the politicization of our belief in God is the worst kind of corruption, institutional corruption, that you could possibly have. You always have to fight the institutional corruption, even of our own churches. But when you bring in these corrupt politicians, you're going to wind up with just corrupt politics. And you can see that in Hegseth, and you can see it in Trump. When asked whether Hegseth views the war in Iran in religious terms, a Defense Department spokesperson pointed to a recent CBS interview in which Hegseth seemed to confirm as such. He said, we're fighting religious fanatics who seek a nuclear capability in order for some religious Armageddon. He said, from my perspective, obviously I'm a man of faith who encourages our troops to lean into their faith and to rely on God and to kill people who have not attacked you, I would add, right? Is that really how you lean into that? Lean into your faith? How you rely on God? Generations of evangelicals have been influenced by their own version of Armageddon. And again, we had a very good comment. I forget who made this comment, but it was on Friday. We had a listener who made the comment, and he said, when you look at Zionism and when you look at what has happened in Judaism, they have gone from Torah, the 5 books of the Bible, and they don't like the prophetic books as much as they would Torah, the law of Moses, but they went from that to rabbinical commentary. It allowed them to have a veneer of God without actually following God. They could make up their own rules. And we've had the same type of thing. He drew the analogy between that and dispensationalism, Scofield Bible, where you get a commentary that is basically changing everything, but doing it with veneer of saying, well, this is really the Bible, when in actuality, you're not following the Bible. You're following a system of commentaries. Just like the Talmud is rabbinic commentary, so is the Scofield Bible. It might give you a clue as to where the Scofield Bible came from, as a matter of fact. Generations of evangelicals have been influenced by their own version of Armageddon. Zionist pastor John Hagee says, prophetically, we're right on cue. Again, this has become their God. It is what they worship. It is kind of a divination, is the way I see what they're doing. If we get so caught up in prophecy, and yet they don't want to look at the prophecies that have been fulfilled in Christ. That is the most amazing thing to me. They'll come back and say, well, we're dispensationalists, so we follow the Bible literally. Well, I think following the Bible literally means following it as it was written. When you look at most of the prophecies that are in the Bible that are talking about prophetic prophecies about the Messiah, about Christ. You see issues. We got this bug just keeps coming back here. Anyway, you get these. This time of year, we have a problem with stink bugs that get in every time you open the door, and then they seem to kind of keep wanting to march towards me. But anyway, we look at what is happening with the Old Testament kingdom prophecies. They always want to interpret them in terms of Israel rather than in terms of Christ. And I had a listener who sent me a email about that very thing, about Isaiah 53, which is kind of interesting because when John MacArthur was on with Ben Shapiro, he talked to Ben Shapiro about Isaiah 53. Isaiah 53 is an amazing prophecy that was written, and we know because we got the Dead Sea Scrolls that dated it now 700 years before Christ. And it's amazing how Isaiah 53, the suffering servant, is really about one individual. It's not about Israel. And now the rabbinic interpretations would always say that when Isaiah is talking about the servant, he's talking about Israel collectively. But this again was sent to me by a listener. I think he looked this up on, it was AI's take on it, which I would largely agree with. The text, Isaiah 53, was written approximately 700 BC, describes a sinless servant who suffers substitutionary for others, is silent before his accusers, and dies among criminals. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons why John MacArthur did that, I've heard so many times testimonies of Jewish people who become Christians. Many of them identify as Messianic Jews, but they'll frequently say the thing that really was the eye-opener for them was Isaiah 53. Somebody would come to them and say, read it to them, and they'd say, who is that talking about? They'd say, well, that's talking about Jesus. Well, that's from your book. That's from Isaiah 53. So they'd look at it and they would question it, and it would be a real epiphany for them. And so, as it points out when it summarizes it, the summary that he sent me, he said, the core divide between mainstream Judaism is that the suffering servant is the nation of Israel collectively, whereas Christians would understand it as the individual Messiah, fulfilled by Jesus Christ with remarkable precision approximately 700 years after the prophecy was written. And the reality is that the Christian position has always been, it doesn't show up in this summary here. Christian position, as I understood it, is that sometimes the servant is talking about Israel, and sometimes it is talking about the individual Messiah. But here's the kicker. When you go back and you look at Israel itself is a picture of the Messiah. For example, when you look at Matthew, and it talks about how when Jesus fled Herod and his family went to Egypt, and then they come back at a point in time, it says, so the prophecy may be fulfilled, out of Egypt I have called him. It's like, well, wait a minute, that's talking about taking Israel out of Egypt collectively. That's what was talking about in the actual passage. And yes, that actually happened. Yes, God actually took them out of Israel, but that was a picture of what he would do with Christ. And that's the way it is throughout the Old Testament kingdom prophecies. They are pictures of what God was going to do in Christ's work, what God was going to do with those who were the people who trust in God, the children of the promise, as he points out, and that were there before there was ever the Mosaic law. You still had the promise of Abraham and those who trusted in it. And so, as Paul makes a distinction in several books of the New Testament, he talks about the fact that there's the people who are physically descended from Abraham, but it's different than the people who are his spiritual children who trust in Christ. The spiritual reality is greater than the physical reality. That is stressed over and over again in the New Testament, and it's surprising to me that people can't see that as the greater reality that is there. But as I point out, why the Jewish collective interpretation fails logically, Isaiah 53 describes the servant as sinless. No violence, no deceit in his mouth, Isaiah said repeatedly. He condemned, at the same time, he repeatedly condemned Israel for sin in the same book. So you can't simultaneously indict the nation of Israel for sin and then present the nation of Israel as sinless. That is a direct internal contradiction. And that runs throughout the Bible. You know, we talk about the passage that's repeated in the New Testament many times. Each of us has gone our own separate ways, right? And each of us has turned his own way. There's none who is righteous, no, not one. How then do you say that the nation of Israel is the suffering, sinless Messiah? Well, it just doesn't hold together. And furthermore, the servant suffers for others' sins. He was pierced for our transgressions. If Israel is a servant, then whose sins is Israel atoning for? Israel is atoning for Gentile sin? No, that has no foundation anywhere in the Torah. I don't even know if it's got a foundation in Talmud either. And then finally, Isaiah 49 explicitly distinguishes the servant from Israel. It says the servant's mission is directed toward Israel, making them two separate entities. So early rabbinical sources, including the Targum Jonathan, applied Isaiah 53 to an individual Messiah, not to Israel collectively. The collective interpretation became dominant only after Christianity adopted the individual messianic reading, suggesting that the shift was driven by the need to counter Christian apologetics rather than emerging organically from the text. And that is exactly what is happening with Zionism and with dispensationalism. They have substituted the nation of Israel for Christ himself in the same way that modern rabbinical writing substitutes the nation of Israel for the suffering servant of Isaiah 53. The individual interpretation doesn't have any internal contradictions. The collective interpretation, however, requires ignoring all of these internal contradictions, at least three of them. And so that is one of the key things that we need to look at, and that is, are we focusing ourselves, and this is for us individually, are we focusing ourselves on, I've been to churches that were focused on homeschooling, right? Does that become the focus? Is our focus on a particular denomination? Is our focus on an ethnic group? Is our focus on politics? Is our focus on Israel, a foreign political entity? We can always find a way to redirect our focus away from the Lord Jesus Christ onto something that is more familiar, something that we really think is important, something that we make an idol out of. That is the true issue. Well, before I take a break, I want to get to this response too. I had a listener who was very upset with me because I played a clip from Grady Judd. I've played that clip a lot of times. I thought it was really funny. He says, hey, just chill out, have a moon pie, and stop murdering people. I've played that over and over again with a lot of different context. And
it's in the deck. You want me to play it?
Yeah, go ahead and play that.
So just chill out. Drink a 7-Up, eat a moon pie, quit murdering people.
Well, there you go. Now, this guy was very upset with me. I'll tell you what he had to say. Georgia boy, what he goes by. He says, your research on Judd, he said, he is a corrupt individual that has all the wares of Satan. Please do research on these criminals before you promote them. He is a slithering snake. He is a Trump advocate. He is mentioned in the Epstein files at HindustanTimes.com. I could spend hours elaborating on this media soundbite machine who has 180,000 followers on TikTok. Sir, I question your motivations and shame on you. Well, let me just say this. I did not do that to promote him. Anybody who listens to me and has listened to me over a period of time knows that I don't promote individuals. I promote principles, I promote issues, and I cover these things issue by issue. You take Ron Wyden, for example. I have spoken many times about Ron Wyden. I have defended him when James Clapper and Michael Hayden attacked him and said, well, he knew that we were spying on Americans without a search warrant. How dare him? He knew, and his staff knew, and all those senators and all their staff knew. Why did he put him on the spot? Why did he have him commit perjury? In addition to violating the Constitution. That's James Clapper. Says, shame on Ron Wyden. Well, I've talked about that, not to promote Ron Wyden, but to promote the idea that we do not want to have a government that does warrantless searches. We don't want to have a surveillance state. And every time I talk about it, I say, look, I'm not promoting Ron Wyden. He's got, on his issues, he's a Democrat from, I think, Washington or something, or Oregon. And I don't agree with him on anything except this particular issue, but I do agree with him on that issue. And it's amazing to me that he's about the only person in the Senate that has that position on that issue. So I do talk about, I don't know why he takes a position for freedom there and is against freedom on so many other areas. But I take these things one by one. And when I talked about Grady Judd, or Judd Grady, I guess, Grady Judd, He's got two first names there, and I don't know which one goes first. Anyway, when I talked about him, as a matter of fact, even in the article, I was surprised because I'd not done my research on it. I was just going with the soundbite that he had. I thought it was excellent that there was pushback from local law enforcement against Trump and against Ron DeSantis in terms of what they were doing with the immigration policy. I don't agree with what they're doing with immigration policy, and I agreed with his position, with Judd's position on the immigration policy. And I disagreed with what Ron DeSantis was doing about it as well. And so did Reason. But they did point out, they said, with a caveat, they said, but this guy is a real drug warrior. And there were some other things that they said about it. And I read that. I pointed that out. And so understand that just to support somebody on one issue doesn't mean that you support them across the board. And when it comes to the war on drugs, I got to say, and anybody who watches this program knows what I think about the war on drugs, and they know what I think about Trump. Anybody who supports Trump, anybody who supports war on drugs is not somebody that I would vote for. Because the problem with war on drugs is not only does it corrupt our country, and it's been used as the excuse for every kind of police state surveillance abuse you can imagine. Every kind of bullying and shredding of the Constitution has been justified in the name of the war on drugs. And one of the worst things about it is that it directs people, gives them a false hope and a false solution. The solution to drug addiction is found in the Lord Jesus Christ. And we've covered this over and over again. I've had people come on and give testimonies as personal testimonies or testimonies as missionaries, kids, a missionary family's kid who saw this and how it got people who are addicted to drugs, got them out of it. So I've had multiple people come on, give their personal testimony. We've talked about how the government itself has seen that the programs that work are the ones that are based in faith of the Lord Jesus Christ. That is the issue. And so to hold up this idea that the government can fix this is a misdirection. It keeps people from the real solution to the real problem. And it also destroys our society and our government. So I do not in any way, shape, or form support the war on drugs. And so I just wanted to say that and make it clear that when I talk about these issues, and if I agree with somebody or I quote somebody, it's just about that. And I thought it was perfect, his the way that matched, since he was pushing back against ICE. I thought the fact that he said, chill out, stop murdering people. Yes, Lance.
It's just Georgia Boy that comments frequently in chat. It wanted to specify that he's not the same Georgia Boy that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. That's fine. Yeah. This is Georgia Boy 890 is the one who sent that. So it's that Georgia Boy, I guess. There's at least 890 of them, I guess, out there. Unless that number has some specific meaning to him. We're going to take a quick break and we will be right back. Stay with us.
Using free speech to free minds. It's the David Knight Show.
Whether you're feeling like the blues or bluegrass, APS Radio has you covered. Check out a wide variety of channels on our app at apsradio.com.
As a matter of fact, just to continue on this whole thing, the chill out, have a moon pie and stop murdering people. I thought that was very appropriate given the fact that Mark Wayne Mullen has such anger issues and he's being put in charge of this police force that Trump is always turning to. It's like his own personal Gestapo that's out there. And he wants to put them in at the TSA now. And just take a look at what is happening. Here's Atlanta and the lines that you see from TSA. Look at this. Snaking around the entire airport. Look at that. Absolutely amazing. The Atlanta TSA line has now stretched to a stunning 153-minute wait time at 6 a.m. in the morning, tweeted somebody, and they put that picture out there. So, yeah, that is the issue that we're facing there. And that is all in spite of the fact that everybody is very upset about we have to have TSA or we can't be safe. If the radical left Democrat, says Trump, don't immediately sign an agreement to let our country, in particular our airports, be free and safe again, I'll move our brilliant and patriotic ICE agents into the airports. Well, they will do security like nobody's ever seen it before, says Trump. Childish and foolish. Free and safe. No, the TSA and this B.F. Skinner behavioral conditioning, let me put my hands on you and then you can fly. That's positive operant conditioning. That is beyond freedom and beyond dignity, and it doesn't do anything for anybody's safety. Here's an example of this. TSA failing 95% of the time when tested.
TSA officers failed 95% of the time during undercover operations designed to test their ability to detect explosives and weapons at airport security checkpoints.
These are anomalies that TSA screeners and or their equipment should it locate and at least flag for an additional screening.
Teams with the Department of Homeland Security Inspector General's office posed as passengers and attempted to pass through airport checkpoints with mock explosives and weapons. A government official with knowledge of the results say TSA failed 67 out of 70 tests.
To miss 67 out of 70 different instances is extremely alarming and I would say even dangerous.
I am putting a detonator into
apparently it wasn't dangerous.
Yeah, that's right. There is no threat to airports.
CNN was there in 2008 for a similar covert operation. That time it was TSA testing its own officers.
Can't see anything?
No, we can't see it. Okay.
At the checkpoint, the tester is wanded and patted down where the fake explosive device was concealed, but the screener missed it. It's not until the tester lifts his shirt up.
Oh, I see it now.
The Department of Homeland Security says it, quote, immediately directed TSA to implement a series of actions, several of which are now in place.
Is it the technology that's failing, or is it the screeners themselves not following proper protocol? If TSA's screening equipment is failing and not doing the job, that's a larger systemic issue that TSA needs to address.
Renee Marsh, CNN, Washington.
No, the big issue is that there is no threat. Look, if they're failing 95% of the time, we haven't had any issues at all, then of course there is no threat. And we know that from their documents. I've said this many times before. Pacer.gov, where they post the lawsuits that are there and also the documents that are part of discovery, they made a mistake and they put them up without redacting them. And then they realized it later that day, but we got both of those. The person who had the lawsuit against TSA notified us, and we got the what they put up that was unredacted, and then they took that down and they redacted it to show us what they didn't want us to see. And what they didn't want us to see was in 2011, they said there is no threat against airports or airplanes because, frankly, folks, we can determine that ourselves. We don't need the TSA to tell us that, but the TSA did tell us that. We don't need the TSA to tell us that because since they can't catch anybody, we would have had, if there was a threat, there would have been terrorist attacks, but they're not. So this is an intelligence test. This is an obedience test. That's what it really is, yes.
And we would have heard about it if they had caught someone also. It's
That's
not
right.
just the ones that they let slip through. They would be trumpeting that from the rooftops if they had actually stopped a single threat in their entire existence.
That's right. They need to do what the FBI does, which is to create their own threats and then bust it. It's like an arsonist starting the fireman arsonist, right? Look at all the fires that I put out.
They still miss 97% of the people they send through.
That's right. So Elon Musk is going to come to the rescue. He said he offered on Saturday to help pay the TSA workers. I'd like to offer to pay the salaries of TSA personnel during this funding impasse that is negatively affecting the lives of so many Americans at airports throughout the country. Again, the solution is not to fund it, but to cancel it. And at the very least, you could, if you're going to continue with this security theater that doesn't protect anybody because there's not any threat, and they've proved that there is no threat. If you're going to continue this, you could at least do what a half dozen airports do, which is to allow them to be funded individually instead of going through the government, just like the government got in the way with the air traffic controllers. You don't need to have the TSA, and even if you got the TSA and this security theater, it doesn't need to be funded through the government. But now Trump is going to send ICE agents to the airports on Monday. So again, that's his go-to federal police. He loves having the ICE agents. They are his own personal Gestapo that are out there. And we'll just wrap up with this one last thing. I got this email from a listener, and I appreciate it. This is Benny H. on Subscribestar. He sent us a tip. And he said it's catch-up for the payment that was rejected in December 2025 and missed some contributions since then. So he said, I know you were frustrated on the day that you had some technical difficulties, and that was nothing compared to what happened today. So we are running late, and we're going to re-edit this and put this on a loop and put the program that we've now done because we had so many problems this morning. But fortunately, Travis and Lance got this thing together. They troubleshot, and it appears that you guys have found the issue now. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, the problems we had today was a result of replacing equipment that was going bad, that was causing the other problems. And we didn't put in correctly. So I apologize.
So he said, heard your comment while listening to the rebroadcast, and that was one of the other things that, my voice was supposed to be out of it, and I had a hot mic. Fortunately, I didn't get too hot. But anyway, he said, just remember the enemy, Satan the devil, doesn't want the information you're providing to get it out. And this is spiritual warfare, just as I was saying before. That is, each and every one of us is involved in spiritual warfare on a daily basis, constantly, really. And it's not about what Pete Hegseth thinks it's about. Preparing our hands for warfare and our fingers for battle is not so that we can go kill people in foreign lands like a crusader. It's not that at all. But he said, every morning when you get up, he says, I want the devil's expression to be, hell. David Knight's up again on the radio. Well, he had us today, didn't he, for a while? But anyway, we're back, and I appreciate all of you who are still with us. So, by the way, he also says he's a fellow believer out of Temple Terrace, Florida, which I know that area very, very well. Grew up in Tampa, and I knew a lot of people in Temple Terrace. But I don't know if I knew you, Benny, but appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you for the support. And we're still taking some incoming hits. Took a lot of them today, but we're back, and hopefully we won't have any problems with the broadcast in the future. Thank you for joining us. Have a good day. Common man. They created Common Core to dumb down our children. They created Common Pass to track and control us. Their Commons Project to make sure the commoners own nothing. And the communist future. They see the common man as simple, unsophisticated, ordinary. But each of us has worth and dignity, created in the image of God. That is what we have in common. That is what they want to take away. Their most powerful weapons are isolation, deception, intimidation. They desire to know everything about us while they hide everything from us. It's time to turn that around and expose what they want to hide. Please share the information and links you'll find at thedavidknightshow.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. If you can't support us financially, please keep us in your prayers. thedavidknightshow.com.